When the sun dipped behind the jagged cliffs of the Aegean and the winds grew still, like the breath held by the gods themselves, stories whispered through the broken cities of Hellas spoke of a shadow, one man, one empire, one unstoppable tide. His name was Xerxes, the king of kings, ruler of the vast Persian Empire, a man whose ambition was so blinding it scorched everything it touched. People today remember him for his invasion of Greece, for battles like Thermopylae and Salamis, but beneath those grand tales lies something darker, something ancient chroniclers only dared to hint at, something that history itself tried to bury. For what Xerxes did to the daughters of Hellas was a cruelty that echoed far beyond any battlefield. The story begins after the fall of cities like Eretria and Athens, when Persian forces stormed through the Hellenic world with the fury of a storm god unleashed. After every city fell, not only gold and warriors were taken, but women, thousands of them, captured as the ultimate trophies of conquest. They were paraded before Persian generals, chosen like livestock, and transported across the sea to serve in the sprawling palaces of Persia. Xerxes believed that to break a nation you must not defeat its armies but its identity, its blood, its future. And the daughters of Hellas were the future he sought to shatter. These women, many barely past childhood, were forced into the silken labyrinths of the royal harems, lost in a world of opulence that hid a reality of despair. Behind those jeweled doors lay a life without choice, without freedom, without even the comfort of remembering who they once were. Some were forced into roles of concubines. Others were gifted to nobles as rewards for loyalty. And many were absorbed into the machinery of palace servitude where their names were stripped away and replaced with new ones more pleasing to Persian tongues. The chronicles whisper that Xerxes himself selected some for his private chambers, not out of love or desire, but to prove the extent of his dominance over the rebellious Greeks. Every daughter of Hellas taken was a silent wound carved into the pride of a nation that had resisted him with every breath. But the cruelty didn't stop there. The Persian courts believed in rituals of loyalty, rituals that demanded submission not only of the body, but of the spirit. The daughters of Hellas were forced to participate in ceremonies designed to sever their ties to their homeland, forced to wear Persian dress, learn Persian customs, and even perform dances and songs meant to honor the very empire that destroyed their families. Some resisted, some fought, some refused to bow, and history remembers what happened to them in fragments that chill the blood. Those who defied the King of Kings were punished publicly within palace walls, made examples of so no other captive would ever dare raise her voice. Records left by Greek survivors speak of whips made of twisted leather and bronze, of forced march across burning courtyards, of isolation chambers where light never touched the floor. And for those whose beauty caught the wrong kind of attention, life became a never-ending struggle between surviving the day and surviving the night. Yet hidden within this darkness were sparks of defiance that even Xerxes could not extinguish. Some of these women formed secret sisterhoods inside the palace, sharing stories of home, teaching each other fragments of Greek prayers, keeping their language alive when speaking it was forbidden. Their whispers moved through the palace like ghosts, haunting the empire that tried to erase them. It was said that even Xerxes, in moments of paranoia, feared these silent rebellions, believing that the spirits of Hellas walked the corridors, waiting for the moment the empire would fall, and fall it would. Because the cruelty inflicted upon the daughters of Hellas became one of the many sparks that fueled Greek determination to resist Persia with every ounce of strength they possessed. The battles that followed, Salamis, Plataea, were not just wars for land or power. They were wars for the honor of those who had been taken, for sisters, daughters, wives, and mothers carried away into the abyss of an empire that believed itself eternal. When Xerxes returned to Persia after his humiliating defeats, he carried with him the weight of failure, but also the ghosts of the women he had wronged. Some versions of the story say that several of them lived long enough to see the empire weaken from within, to watch palace rivalries turn into blades in the night, to watch the King of Kings lose the absolute control he once wielded. Others did not survive long enough to witness justice, but their stories lived, carried through generations of Greek families who refused to let their names fade. And so, Behind the grand image of Xerxes, the towering king, the golden throne, the endless armies, lies a truth far more human, far more disturbing. His greatest cruelty was not the burning of temples or the slaughter of warriors. It was the quiet destruction of innocent lives, the attempt to steal the future of Hellas by possessing its daughters. And that is why the ancient Greeks remembered him not simply as a conqueror but as a tyrant whose shadow darkened the lives of countless women who never marched in armies, never held swords, but suffered more deeply than any soldier on any battlefield. Their cries, hidden in the folds of history, remind us that empires often fall not because of enemies outside, but because of the pain they inflict within. And in the silence of forgotten chambers and the broken memories carried across generations, the daughters of Hellas still whisper their truth, a truth darker than the chronicles dare to record, a truth that reveals the true cost of Xerxes' hunger for power.